Bodies change. Bodies change. I know it's such a simple phrase, but at a very specific moment along my journey of disordered eating and at a very specific moment in the early phases of my healing from disordered eating, that thought echoed through my mind. Bodies change. And it took something that at the time felt so heavy, felt like it mattered so much, was so fear-based, and turned it into something that didn't matter as much as I was making it out to matter. Wasn't so heavy, and was instead full of hope. And what was that thing? Well, that was the way that I looked, and that was my intense preoccupation with what I was eating, calories, chemicals associated with different processed foods, etc. That was really heavy at the time and felt like it mattered so much. And it was dictating what I allowed myself to do, or rather what I didn't allow myself to do. At the time, I was going through a period of transition. Prior to that moment where I thought bodies change, I was ending college. I was ending my undergraduate time, so I was preoccupied with classes and finishing up projects and had a routine, so I wasn't necessarily as preoccupied. That, of course, being relative, because it's always whispering somewhere in the back of my mind what I look like and the calories associated with different foods, but it wasn't bombarding me constantly because I had a routine and I had a focus on something else. So I was pleased with the way that I looked. Cut to, I then graduated and moved across the country, started a new job, lived with different people, and I didn't have a car out there at the time because I wasn't sure how long I was going to be in this new region of the country. So, as a result, I walked 6 miles to and from work, round trip. Not 12 miles, 6 miles, round trip. And first of all, shout out to the intern that I did with this. That woman is an absolute beast because she would get up early, she would walk her 3 miles to work, then she would go to the gym, start her work day, and then she would walk her 3 miles home. So, shout out to her. She's an absolute inspiration. But as you might imagine, as one logically thinks when they start to exert more physical energy, is you require some more nutritional input. You need to eat a little bit more. My physical exertion aside, the mental load associated with all of these changes, a move, a new region of the world, a new job, the mental gymnastics associated with your early 20s and the realization that, oh, life is not as it seems in college. In college, I was on this pursuit of perfection. I was in pursuit of a 4.0. The world doesn't grade you in that system. The degree of perfectionism that I thought was required is not required. So all of the mental gymnastics associated with your early 20s and exiting school, being under the guise of my parents ultimately, since I was at school on partially their dime, was mental load enough to logically think, hey, I probably just need to eat a little bit more. If I'm not mistaken, our brain is responsible for the metabolism of a majority of our calories, if I'm not mistaken. So please fact check me on that. I should probably not say it if it wasn't fact checked, but I'm reasonably sure that it's true. So the mental load enough would have been reason to believe that I probably just need to eat a little bit more. But on top of that, the 6 miles a day, also very good reason to just consume a little bit more. But no, not me. Could not possibly handle eating more. Eating more meant my body was going to change for what I thought was going to be the worst, and I could not grapple with that. My body could not change. And I have had that exact thought verbatim, as I'm sure maybe many of us have had as well, in my past, and it has always led to chaos. But I'm an insane person. So the previous experience of having said that word and having had it always, as a result, slap me in the face was not enough reason yet to believe that I should not think it again. I was 16. I was noticing the bodies around me changing, and I thought my body cannot change. Well, my body changed. And then I was a freshman in college, and I thought, no, I am not going to gain the freshman 15. So in both of these scenarios, I just took on more control. And what happened in this period of transition after college, I took on more control. I just restricted more. And as you might imagined, as happened to the 16-year-old and as happened to the girl in college, I took on more control. I developed a huge appetite, and I would just binge eat. And what does a binge eater do when they binge eat? They become ashamed. And what do they do when they become ashamed? Well, they binge eat more. So I just binged ate more and more and more. And well, my body changed. And this time, as in all the times, I was beside myself, distraught. The way I looked mattered so much. And I wanted the way that I looked to change by yesterday. So as I would do, and as I had done in the past, I would take on radical action to try and solve the problem. More restriction, so more binging. More distraughtness over the way that I looked. So when the interns asked me if I wanted to go kayaking or hiking or go to the beach, I would commit in the moment, but I was always back out of those commitments. Because no, I needed to stay home and keep things under control, which just ultimately meant losing control. And it meant seriously disappointing the girl that I was living with at the time, the intern I was living with, because I said, yes, I would go. But I allowed the way that I looked, I falsely allowed the way that I looked to dictate what I did, or rather what I would not do. It mattered so much. It was so heavy, and I felt so stuck, and I was afraid that my body was not going to change for what I thought would be for the better. Because I was exhausted at the thought of having to make radical changes again, because that's the way that I have been able to allow my body to change for the better in the past, is to take on radical change, over-exercise, under-eat, become over-preoccupied with food, that I'm fearful, on edge, angry, mean to everybody, or rather not even having the opportunity to be mean because I'm just isolating from everybody in the world, not reaching out to people, backing out of commitments because of the way that I looked. So incredibly vain. And then I started watching videos that are produced by Linda Sun. And if you don't know Linda, definitely check Linda out. She creates videos that are often a compilation of clips of herself doing different things, of herself struggling through her own binge eating, disordered eating, body image issues, but also her amazing highs associated with her as an overachiever. And I mean that in the best way. She's an absolutely capable human being, an incredible human being. She runs marathons, and she does so. She's just your regular human being that's like, yes, I can run a marathon. She's not like a professional runner, although I would disagree and say maybe she is, but nonetheless, she shows her experience, her trials, and her achievements, and her perfectionism, which lends itself to the disordered eating. And the clips that she's pulling from are from oftentimes across a week or a month, or maybe even sometimes a year, and she's narrating over these clips with beautiful monologues. And her body changes throughout one episode, since these are clips throughout and over multiple days, her body changes. And eventually, since it always seems that internally, my mind, my body, my soul, my entire being is searching for the peaceful epiphany that I need to transcend out of the muck that I'm in the season of life that I'm in, whatever that muck might be. My mind, my body, my soul is always searching for that peaceful epiphany I need that will bring my entire disposition out of fear, out of perseveration, out of over preoccupation, to a place that is lighter, more hope-filled, more confident in knowing that if I stick to something, if I strap myself to fortitude and prudence, it will all change for the better. That I do not need to radically change myself by yesterday, but I need to patiently change myself through fortitude and prudence every single day. But before that, I need the peaceful epiphany first that brings me there. Much like Aldous Huxley's description of what a drug will do. They bring you out through the doors of perception. You're in one state of mind, you take the drug, and you're in the next state of mind. And new worldview, new mental state, new physical state, new paradigm for life. And that epiphany was, for me, I was on my first part of the journey home, on my 3-mile walk home. And that first part of the journey on the way home is through the preserve that I had mentioned. And it's a beautiful preserve. So now it's California golden hour and the sun is going down and the anxiety of getting mauled by a mountain lion subsided for just an instant. And in popped that aha, peaceful epiphany moment where finally all the pieces came together and I realized over the course of a video, over the course of watching Linda's son inspire me, my love and admiration for this woman who I do not even know changes not one bit in response to her body changing. And guess what? Over every single video, her body changes. And I'm not saying it changes for the worse. It just changes because, Theresa, that's life. And bodies change. And I realized my body is going to change. And it doesn't need to matter so much. I do not need to convince myself that focusing more on the body and the food is going to allow it to change. There was a sense of lightness, the sense of detachment from those preoccupying thoughts. And if I detach myself from it, my body will probably, for the better, because I'm still a woman and I want my body to always look for the better, will probably change for the better. It is an entirely different experience walking into the kitchen to prepare a meal when it is not preempted by hours of thinking about calories, what I'm going to prepare, if it's going to be enough. When that is the case, you become mentally hungry. And physically hungry, because as hours pass, you tend to become physically hungry. But when going into the kitchen is preempted by all of those thoughts, it is a physical and a mental hunger. And then you sit down over 5 to 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it might be, and you eat, and then your stomach becomes physically hungry or physically full because biology kicks in, but your mind is still hungry because that was such a short experience. You've been looking forward to it all day. You've been preoccupied with it all day. That's just not enough. But when you forget about food, when you fall in love with something, a book, writing, hobbies, sports, your friends, your family, and you forget about food, the mental hunger is satiated by all these things you fell in love with. And so you head into the kitchen and your mind isn't hungry, but your body's hungry. In accordance with biology, it tends not to take all that long, and it tends not to take all that much, depending on the degree of hunger you have, to fulfill that need. You finish the meal, your stomach descended a little bit, the glucose goes back up, and you're satiated. And your mind doesn't need more because your mind wasn't relying on the food in the first place. Sometimes it is, but for a majority, it's often your body in need. You might have only been thinking about the food in the moments that you were cooking it. But you haven't fallen in love with food, you've fallen in love with your life, so then you eat, you become satiated, and you move on to the things that you've fallen in love with. And you're not worried about your body changing because, hey, bodies change. Bodies change.